Emily Carter had always been the kind of person who kept moving, even when her body begged her to slow down. At 29, she had learned to carry her responsibilities like a second skin. She lived alone in a small apartment in Seattle, spending most of her time in the office. Trying to prove herself in a job that demanded more than it ever offered back, she didn't complain, didn't break down, didn't ask for help. She believed pushing through was the only way to survive in a world that rewarded results more than feelings. That Thursday began, like every other, but it ended unlike any day she had ever known. The team had been preparing for a major presentation, an important one that could shape the entire year ahead. Emily was responsible for organizing everything. And even though she was talented and efficient, she felt the pressure building in her chest like a tightening knot. People relied on her, trusted her, and expected answers she wasn't sure she had. When the new consultant arrived, a confident man named Ryan Hale. Emily's first thought was that he was too composed for the chaotic environment he had stepped into. He introduced himself with a simple smile. And she noticed that he had a quiet way of observing everything, like he understood more than he let on. She had no time to think about it, though. There were documents to prepare, data to fix, and last-minute changes that kept coming like waves. Hours passed. The office grew quieter. People packed their bags and wished each other good night. Emily stayed behind, staring at her computer screen as the words blurred together. Her shoulders ached from tension, but she didn't let herself stop. She knew she needed this report finished before morning. She stretched her neck, hoping to ease the pressure, but it only made her realize how tired she really was. She had skipped lunch again. She had ignored the soft throb behind her eyes. She kept going because she had convinced herself. She didn't have another choice. That was when she heard footsteps behind her. Ryan stopped by her desk, holding his jacket in one hand. He looked surprised to see her still working. "You haven't left yet?" he asked. Emily forced a smile she didn't feel. "Almost done." He studied her for a moment, not saying anything, but she could tell he noticed the exhaustion she was trying so hard to hide. She hated that a stranger could read her so easily. She preferred to seem strong and controlled, not overwhelmed and tired. "Emily," he said gently, "you've been staring at the same screen for 20 minutes. She blinked. She didn't even realize he had been watching long enough to know that. "You look exhausted," he continued. "You don't have to keep pushing yourself like this." She laughed lightly, hoping to brush it off. "That's part of the job." "Not like this," he said. His voice wasn't firm or demanding. It was calm, like someone who actually cared to understand her. That alone made something shift inside her. Emily looked away, embarrassed by how much his words affected her. "I'm fine," she whispered, almost to convince herself. But Ryan didn't leave. Instead, he stepped closer to her chair, stopping just behind her. She felt his presence before she saw him. He wasn't intrusive, but she could sense him paying attention in a way she hadn't experienced from anyone at work. "Emily," he said softly, "your shoulders are tense." She didn't answer. Her throat tightened because she knew it was true. She felt his hand, light and warm, rest gently on her shoulder, not in a romantic way. Not in a way that crossed boundaries, but in a quiet, comforting way. The way someone might touch a friend who is about to fall apart from stress. Her body stiffened for a moment, a mix of surprise and uncertainty. She hadn't been touched with kindness in a long time. It made her realize how isolated she had become, how disconnected she felt from everyone around her. "I'm sorry," he said quickly, pulling his hand back a little. "You just looked like you were in pain. I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable." But she wasn't uncomfortable, not in the way he thought. She was just caught off guard. No one ever paused to check on her. No one ever asked if she was okay. "It's fine," she whispered, barely above a breath. Ryan hesitated for a moment. "You're carrying everything alone," he said. "That's not easy." The words hit her harder than anything else he had said. They felt like a mirror held up to her life. She swallowed hard, suddenly aware of how quickly her emotions were rising. "I'm used to it," she said. "That doesn't mean you should deal with it alone," he replied. His voice was steady, but underneath it she sensed something deeper: empathy, maybe even concern. She wasn't used to people noticing the cracks beneath her calm exterior. It made her feel exposed, but strangely relieved. Her shoulders slumped without her meaning to. She realized she had been holding herself up for so long that she had forgotten what it felt like to let go. Even for a second. Ryan stepped back slightly, giving her space, but not retreating completely. "You should go home," he said. "You've done more than enough today." She nodded slowly, her exhaustion finally catching up with her. Ryan waited as she shut down her computer and gathered her things. His presence was steady, not overwhelming, just enough to make her feel less alone in the silent office as they walked toward the exit. Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed between them, something subtle, something unexpected. He held the door for her. "Get some rest, Emily." She met his eyes, noticing warmth there that she hadn't seen earlier. "You too," she replied softly, but as she stepped outside into the cool night air, a strange thought crossed her mind, one she couldn't ignore. Why had that simple touch felt like more than just comfort? And why did his concern feel like the beginning of something she wasn't prepared to face? Emily didn't have the answers yet, but the memory of his hand on her shoulder stayed with her long after she walked away. Emily didn't sleep much after that long night at the office. Every time she closed her eyes, she remembered the moment Ryan's hand rested gently on her shoulder. It wasn't anything romantic, nothing inappropriate, yet it lingered in her mind more than she wanted. The warmth of his touch, the quiet concern in his voice, the way he stood behind her like he was trying to protect her from her own exhaustion. It all stayed with her. She tried to shake it off the next morning, telling herself it was just stress, making her overthink. But when she walked into the office and saw him talking to the team, the memory came rushing back. She straightened her posture quickly, hoping she didn't look flustered. Ryan glanced at her the moment she stepped inside. It wasn't a long look, but it was enough to send a small wave of awareness through her. He gave her a polite nod, calm and respectful. She returned it with a faint smile, trying to pretend nothing was different, even though everything felt a little different. The day moved fast. Meetings piled up. Emails kept coming. Deadlines pushed everyone into a rush. Emily buried herself in work, hoping that staying busy would quiet the strange flutter in her stomach. But even in the busyness, she sensed Ryan's presence. He wasn't hovering around her, but he seemed to notice every time she tensed, every time she rubbed her neck or winced when reading something stressful. By late afternoon, her shoulders were aching again. She bent over her computer, trying to focus on a complicated spreadsheet. That was when Ryan appeared beside her desk, his expression serious but gentle. "Emily," he said softly, "take a break. Your shoulders are practically up to your ears." She tried to laugh. "I'm okay. Just a little stiff." "That's not a little," he said, raising an eyebrow. "You've been sitting like that for hours." She swallowed, unsure how to respond. He wasn't teasing or scolding. His voice carried genuine concern, something she wasn't used to receiving at work. Before she could say anything, he stepped closer, not too close, just enough to see her posture more clearly. "You're in pain," he said quietly. Emily's breath caught. She wanted to deny it, but she knew it was useless. He could see right through her. "I'll be fine," she whispered. "You don't always have to be," he replied. "Let me help." She blinked, confused. "Help how?" He hesitated for a moment, making sure she didn't feel pressured. "Your shoulders are tight. A bit of pressure could help relax the muscles. Only if you're comfortable with that." Her heart thudded. She wasn't expecting that. He wasn't suggesting anything improper. It was a simple, human offer, yet it carried a weight she didn't fully understand. She looked down at her hands, unsure what to say. For a moment, the office noise faded, and all she felt was the echo of loneliness she'd been carrying for months. Finally, she nodded. Ryan moved behind her chair, slow enough to give her time to change her mind. When he placed his hands lightly on her shoulders, Emily inhaled sharply, not from fear, but from the sudden warmth. His touch was gentle, careful, almost hesitant, as if he didn't want to cross a line. He applied soft pressure, just enough to ease the stiffness in her muscles. The sudden relief made her close her eyes. "You hold everything here," he murmured. "No wonder you're exhausted." His voice was low, steady, not intimate, but deeply comforting. She felt the tension melting in ways she didn't expect. She hadn't realized how much stress she carried until someone tried to ease it. She felt her throat grow tight with emotion. "Does that help?" he asked. "A little," she whispered, her voice barely steady. He continued for a moment, making sure she was comfortable. He didn't rush, didn't press too hard, didn't make the moment bigger than it should be. It was simple, genuine kindness, something she had forgotten how to accept. "You don't have to do everything alone," he said. "You shouldn't have to." His words broke something inside her, but not in a painful way. It felt like someone had finally noticed the quiet struggle she had been hiding from everyone, including herself. Tears gathered at the corner of her eyes before she could stop them. She wiped them quickly, hoping he didn't notice, but he did. He paused, his hands resting lightly on her shoulders. "Emily, are you okay?" She nodded too quickly. "I'm fine. You don't have to pretend," he whispered. "Not with me." Her breath trembled. She didn't know why his voice affected her so deeply. Maybe because it had been so long since someone spoke to her with that kind of softness. Maybe because she wasn't used to someone seeing past her controlled exterior. Maybe because she sensed that Ryan cared not out of obligation, but out of genuine empathy. I've been tired for a long time," she admitted quietly. He stepped back a little, giving her room to breathe. "Then let someone help you breathe." She turned toward him, surprised by how sincere he looked. She didn't see judgment or pity, only concern, steady and warm. But before she could say anything else, before she could understand what she was feeling, Ryan suddenly stepped away, almost too quickly. His expression changed as though he remembered something important, something he wasn't ready to share. I shouldn't stay too long," he said, running a hand through his hair. "I didn't mean to overstep." "You didn't," she said softly. He seemed relieved but still troubled. A flicker of conflict moved through his eyes, as if he wanted to say something but didn't know how. "There's something I should tell you," he said. His voice was calm, but she sensed a storm underneath it. Emily felt her heart tighten. "What is it?" He opened his mouth to speak, then stopped. His gaze dropped to the floor. Whatever he wanted to say, he wasn't ready, not yet. "It's nothing," he said finally, shaking his head. "Forget I said anything." But Emily couldn't forget. The uncertainty in his voice lingered in her mind long after he walked away. She didn't know what he was hiding. She didn't know why he looked so torn. But she sensed that the gentle moment they shared meant more than either of them could admit. And something inside her whispered that whatever Ryan wasn't saying would change everything soon. The 2 days after the shoulder massage felt strangely heavy for Emily. She had expected things to feel awkward between her and Ryan. But instead of awkwardness, there was distant quiet, sudden and impossible to ignore. It wasn't the kind of distance created by discomfort. It was the kind that came from fear, from holding something back. Ryan didn't avoid her completely. He spoke when needed, worked professionally, and answered her questions. But the warmth from before, the gentleness he had shown, the concern in his voice, the quiet way he had looked at her, was missing. It was as if he had placed an invisible wall between them. Emily tried not to think about it. She felt it every time she looked at him. She remembered the softness of his touch, the way he had almost confessed something, and how he shut down the moment he stepped away. She kept telling herself she shouldn't overthink it. They barely knew each other. He was a consultant. He would be gone after the project ended. She had no right to feel disappointed, but she did. On the 3rd day, she reached her limit. The confusion, the unanswered questions, the strange heaviness. Since that moment, she couldn't carry it silently anymore. During lunch break, she went looking for him. The office was busy, people chatting, typing, and hurrying around. Ryan wasn't at his desk. She checked the break room, the conference rooms, and finally stepped out onto the rooftop terrace. a place she sometimes visited to breathe when work overwhelmed her. There he was. He stood near the edge, hands resting on the railing, staring at the Seattle skyline with a distant expression. The sky was a muted gray, the kind that made the whole city feel softer. Wind tugged at his jacket, but he didn't seem to notice. His mind was somewhere far away. Emily hesitated at the door, unsure if she should disturb him. But the questions weighed too much on her chest. She took a steady breath and walked toward him. "Ryan," she said quietly. He turned, startled. His eyes softened when he saw her, but the worry behind them didn't fade. "Hey," he said, trying to smile, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. She stopped a few feet away, not wanting to invade his space. "Can I ask you something?" He nodded. "Of course." Her heart raced. "Did I do something wrong?" Ryan's eyebrows pulled together. "What? No, why would you think that?" "Because you've been different," she said, "ever since that day." He looked down, exhaling slowly. "Emily, you didn't do anything wrong. I'm the one who's been off." She stepped closer, searching his face. "Then what is it?" He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she now recognized as him trying to steady himself. "I've been trying to figure out how to handle this without making things complicated." "Handle what?" He hesitated, and the silence between them grew heavy. The wind brushed past them, the kind of breeze that made moments clearer. After a long pause, he finally spoke. "You." She froze. "Me. Yes," he said, his voice quiet but steady. "I'm struggling because of how I feel around you." Her breath caught. She wasn't expecting that. "Not so directly," he continued. "You're strong, hardworking, and you push yourself harder than anyone should. And I see it. I see you trying to hold everything together. And it makes me care more than I planned to." Emily's pulse sped up. She didn't know what to say. She had been confused, but hearing him speak so honestly made her chest tighten in a different way. Warm, fragile, hopeful. "I thought I was imagining it," she admitted. "You weren't," he said. "And that's the problem." She frowned softly. "Why is it a problem?" "Because I'm not supposed to feel anything," he said. "I'm here for work. I'm supposed to focus. And you make focusing almost impossible." Emily swallowed hard. "Ryan, I don't want to make things difficult for you." "You're not," he said quickly. "You're just you. And that's what's getting to me." She took a slow step toward him. "If I'm making you uncomfortable, tell me. I don't want you to feel like you crossed some line." "You didn't make me uncomfortable," he said, shaking his head. "You made me feel something I wasn't ready for." He looked away then, staring at the skyline again, as if it was easier than meeting her eyes. Emily moved closer until she stood beside him. "Why did you pull back after that day?" Ryan's jaw tightened. He took a breath. "Because when I was helping you relax your shoulders, it wasn't just concern. It was more, I felt something I wasn't expecting. Something I didn't want to rush or confuse you with." Her heart softened. The uncertainty she had carried for days began to fade. She gave him a small, hesitant smile. "You didn't confuse me." He turned to her slowly. "You sure?" "Yes," she whispered. "I was confused by your silence, not your kindness." He studied her carefully, like he was trying to understand if she meant every word. And she did. She felt strangely relieved, as if he had opened a door she had been standing outside of for years. "Emily," he said, voice low, "I care about you. More than I should, more than makes sense for how short it's been." She felt her cheeks warm, not out of embarrassment, but out of an emotion she hadn't felt in a long time, being seen before either of them could say more. His phone vibrated sharply in his pocket. The sound cut through the fragile moment between them. Ryan glanced at the screen, and his expression changed instantly. The calm faded. His face grew pale, tense, shaken. Emily's stomach dropped. "Ryan, what's wrong?" He didn't answer right away. His hand trembled slightly as he held the phone. "It's my sister," he said quietly. She collapsed. Emily felt the air around them shift. His voice cracked just a little, not enough to break. but enough to reveal the fear he was trying to hold back. "I have to fly to Denver," he said, almost in a whisper. "Tonight?" The world around them felt suddenly still. The growing connection, the emotional honesty, all collided with this new, unexpected fear. Emily stepped toward him, her voice gentle. "Ryan, you don't have to go through this alone." He looked at her, eyes filled with a mix of panic and gratitude. But before he could respond, the rooftop door opened behind them, calling him back to reality. Whatever was going to happen between them would have to wait. Emily's heart raced as she watched Ryan's expression change at the news on his phone. The tension in his body, the tight grip he had on the device, told her that it wasn't just an ordinary call. Her chest tightened as the realization hit her. This was serious. Ryan had been so composed, so careful, so steady for her in the past days. And now he looked vulnerable in a way that made her instinctively want to reach out. He lowered his phone slowly, swallowing hard, and turned toward her. His eyes were wide, troubled, and filled with a mix of fear and worry. "Emily, my sister collapsed. I need to be in Denver tonight. I have to catch the first flight." His voice trembled just enough to let her know the gravity of the situation. Emily took a cautious step closer. "Ryan, you don't have to go through this alone," she said, her voice soft but firm. There was no hesitation in her words. She didn't need to think about what she was saying. Her instinct told her that he needed support, even if it was just a small reassurance. He looked at her, startled. His brows furrowed as if he was unsure how to respond. "Emily, I wasn't expecting. I didn't think anyone would." He trailed off, trying to find words for the rush of emotions he was feeling. He opened his mouth again, but no words came out. He was caught off guard, not by the emergency itself, but by the comfort that Emily was offering him without hesitation. "Then let me help," she said gently. "You've been there for me, even in small ways, and now I want to be there for you." Her hand reached out instinctively. Without thinking, he let her grasp his hand. The warmth of her touch, the simple act of connection, grounded him in a way he hadn't expected. For a moment, the fear in his eyes softened, replaced by gratitude, relief, and something deeper, something he had been trying to deny for days. Emily's heart raced as she held his hand. She felt the subtle tension in his fingers, the slight tremor that came from worry, and it pulled her closer emotionally. "We don't have to solve everything right now," she whispered. "Take it one step at a time." He looked at her, emotions swirling across his face. There was fear, yes, but also AOA appreciation and the growing realization of how much he had come to care for her. "I don't know what will happen," he said quietly. "With my sister, or with us." Emily squeezed his hand gently. "Then let's not worry about that yet. We can face it together." Ryan's chest rose and fell as he absorbed her words. The city around them seemed distant, the wind softer, and the gray Seattle sky mirrored the quiet storm of emotions he was feeling. He pulled her into a careful, warm embrace. Nothing inappropriate. Just two people finding comfort in each other. Her presence felt grounding, and he realized that in the midst of chaos, he wasn't alone anymore. Emily rested her head lightly on his shoulder, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. She felt the tension that had plagued her for weeks slowly melting away. There was relief in simply being present for someone else, even in the smallest way. She realized that caring for another person didn't make her weak, it made her stronger, more human, and more connected. "I wasn't sure how you'd react," he admitted after a moment, his voice low. "I didn't know if you'd step up or pull back." She lifted her head slightly, meeting his eyes. "I've always believed in being there for people I care about. You've been there for me, even when I didn't realize it. Now it's my turn." He nodded slowly, absorbing her words. There was a silent understanding between them, a bond forming through honesty, vulnerability, and shared emotion. The walls they had built around themselves were beginning to crumble, replaced by trust and quiet affection. Suddenly, the phone in his hand vibrated again. He glanced at it, realizing that he still had to leave for the airport. Emily didn't let go of his hand, though. She understood that life didn't wait for perfect timing, and neither did emotions. She offered him a reassuring smile, one that communicated support, patience, and understanding all at once. "I'll be okay," she said softly, "and you'll handle this. Just go, and we'll talk when you come back." Ryan looked at her, the mixture of gratitude and admiration clear in his eyes. He stepped back slightly, taking a deep breath as if preparing to face both the trip and the emotions he had been holding back. "Emily, thank you for everything. I don't know what I'd do without your support right now." "You'd be surprised," she said with a small, knowing smile. "You're stronger than you think. But that doesn't mean you have to face everything alone." His gaze lingered on hers for a moment longer, the air between them charged with unspoken feelings, anticipation, and the quiet thrill of what might be possible. Then he finally nodded, taking the first steps toward the car that would take him to the airport. Emily followed, walking beside him, silent but present, giving him the emotional support he needed without crowding him. When he reached the car, he turned to look at her once more. "When I come back, I want to talk about us," he said, his voice low, sincere, and full of hope. There was no rush in his words, no pressure, just honesty, and the promise of something more if they were willing to explore it. Together, Emily's chest tightened with a mixture of anticipation and warmth. "Then we'll talk," she replied, "and we'll take it one step at a time." As the car pulled away, she watched him go, feeling a mix of fear, hope, and excitement. It wasn't just concern for his sister that occupied her mind, but the sudden awareness that their connection was deeper than she had realized. The simple act of holding hands, offering support, and allowing themselves to be vulnerable had changed something fundamental between them. She walked back toward the office, her heart lighter, her steps steadier. For the first time in weeks, she didn't feel alone. Something new had begun, a fragile, promising chapter built on trust, understanding, and shared emotion. Emily knew that life would continue to challenge them, that uncertainties awaited them both. But the experience of being truly seen and connected had opened a door she wasn't willing to close. As the city lights flickered on, reflecting in the wet pavement from the afternoon drizzle, Emily felt a quiet, growing excitement for what the future might bring. Ryan's presence in her life, sudden and unexpected, had shifted something inside her. It wasn't about immediate romance or dramatic declarations. It was about care, respect, and emotional closeness. That was enough to spark hope, enough to make her feel alive in ways she hadn't experienced in a long time. She paused for a moment, looking up at the skyline, imagining him on the plane, thinking about his sister, and knowing that when he returned, they would face their emotions together. There was comfort in knowing that they had started a journey, not with grand gestures, but with small, meaningful actions that spoke louder than words ever could. Emily smiled softly to herself. The weight she had carried alone for so long didn't vanish completely, but it felt lighter, because someone had finally seen her, understood her, and allowed her to care for them in return. And that, she realized, was the beginning of something worth waiting for.